Smoke fills the lungs before the picture clears. Nina is coughing up soot in the back seat of a stolen sedan, watching her apartment building burn in the distance. Jewa is driving with one hand, the other pressing a towel to his reopening wound. He isn't looking at the fire, he is checking the mirrors for the Vipers, the rival faction. He tells her simply, "You don't exist anymore." They are homeless and haunted in a city that Jewa used to rule. The dynamic inverts. Outside the apartment, Jewa is the navigator, and Nina is the liability. He takes her to a safe underground gambling den, but the greeting is cold. Nina realizes the bounty on Jewa's head is massive, and by extension, there is a price on hers too. She isn't just a witness, she is classified as his accomplice. The basement smelled of stale cigar smoke and damp concrete. It was a gambling den tucked behind a dry cleaning shop in Queens, a place where the sun never touched the floorboards. Nina hugged her arms to her chest, trying to hide the soot staining her uniform. She felt like a beacon in the dim room, surrounded by men speaking in hushed Korean who fell silent as they entered. Jewa didn't limp. He walked with a terrifying, rigid straightness, hiding the fact that his side was held together by superglue and willpower. He marched straight to the back office. "Mr. Hon," Jewa said, kicking the door open. An older man sat behind a mahogany desk counting a stack of dirty bills. He looked up, his eyes widening behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Jewa." Hon stood up, a smile spreading across his face that didn't reach his eyes. We heard the Vipers burn the building. You thought the seat was empty," Jewa cut him off. He leaned against the doorframe, blocking the exit. "It isn't. I need a car. I need 10,000 in cash. Clean bills." Hon hesitated. He glanced at Nina, then back at Jewa's blood-stiffened shirt. "Of course. You are family. Sit, please. I will open the safe." Hon sat back down. His right hand moved slowly toward the underside of the heavy desk. "Don't," Jewa said softly. "It is just the key," Hon smiled, his fingers drifting closer to the hidden panic button. "You are paranoid, nephew. You are safe here." He pushed. Jewa moved before the button clicked. He lunged across the desk, grabbing Hon's wrist and slamming it down onto the mahogany surface. With a precise, sickening torque of his body weight, he twisted. The snap echoed louder than the gunfire had the night before. Hon screamed, a high, thin sound that Jewa cut off by shoving the barrel of his gun into the man's open mouth. "I am not your nephew," Jewa hissed, leaning close to the terrifyingly silent face. "And I am not safe." Nina watched from the doorway, her hand gripping the knife in her pocket. She watched Jewa rifle through the safe with his free hand, stuffing stacks of cash into his jacket. He grabbed a set of keys from the desk. He released Hon, who slumped over, cradling his shattered hand, sobbing quietly. "Call the Vipers," Jewa told the weeping man. "Tell them I was here. Tell them I took your retirement fund." He grabbed Nina's arm and dragged her out the back exit into the alley where a nondescript Honda was parked. "Why did you tell him to call them?" Nina asked, breathlessly sliding into the passenger seat. "Because he was going to anyway," Jewa said, gunning the engine. "Now there is no doubt. The entire network is burned. We are alone." The motel bathroom mirror was cracked, splitting Nina's reflection into two jagged halves. She looked like a ghost who had walked through a chimney. Her waitress uniform, the one she had worn for 3 years, the one that smelled like maple syrup and sanitizer, was stiff with dried blood and ash. Jewa kicked the door open. He tossed a plastic bodega bag onto the damp tile floor. "Put them on," he ordered. "Burn the uniform in the tub." Nina opened the bag. A grey oversized hoodie, black cargo pants, thick wool socks, and cheap work boots. Men's clothes. The kind of clothes worn by people who didn't want to be described by witnesses. I can just wash my. You are a 6-foot black woman in a diner uniform with a name tag that says Nina, Jawa said, his voice devoid of patience. You are a walking billboard. You need to disappear. He reached into the bag and pulled out a pair of kitchen shears, the plastic packaging still on them. He ripped it open. Sit on the toilet lid. Nina stared at the scissors. What are you doing? Your hair, he said, stepping closer. It's distinctive. It has to go. Nina instinctively reached up to touch her braids. They were tight, neat, part of the routine she did every Sunday night. They were her. No, she whispered. We don't have time for vanity, Jawa said. He didn't ask again. He put a hand on her shoulder, heavy and final, pushing her down onto the closed lid. The metal blades made a crunching sound as they bit through the hair. Nina squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the weight lift from her head, strand by thick strand falling onto the dirty linoleum. He didn't cut with style, he cut for clearance. He chopped it close to the scalp, leaving it uneven and raw. Open your eyes, he said when he was done. Nina stood up and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Nina the waitress. The soft edges were gone. Her head was nearly shaved, exposing the sharp line of her jaw and the hollow of her throat. She looked harder. Exposed. Dangerous. She stripped off the uniform and threw it into the bathtub, lighting a match from the book on the counter. The polyester flared up instantly, curling into black plastic sludge. She pulled on the grey hoodie and the cargo pants. They swallowed her frame, hiding her gender, hiding her shape. She laced the heavy boots. Jawa watched her from the doorway. He nodded, once. Good, he said. Now you look like you belong in the car with me. Nina looked at the fire dying in the tub, then at her reflection. She hadn't just changed clothes. She had put on a costume that told the world she was a predator, not prey. And the terrifying part was how naturally the hoodie settled on her shoulders. The bus terminal was a cavern of echoing announcements and the sour smell of diesel fumes. It was a place for people who had nowhere else to be. Jawa dragged Nina into the shadow of a vending machine, away from the sweeping gaze of the security cameras. He pulled a thick, white envelope from his jacket and shoved it into the kangaroo pocket of her new hoodie. Cleveland, he said, his voice low and urgent. The bus leaves in 10 minutes. Do not get off until the last stop. Do not speak to anyone. Do not use your real name. Nina stared at him, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. The heat of the envelope against her stomach felt like a burn. What is this? 20,000. It is enough to start over. Rent a room. Cash only. Stay invisible. He gripped her shoulders, his fingers digging into the fabric. He looked desperate, a man trying to scrub a stain off a white cloth before it set. You are done, Nina. I am cutting you loose. He tried to turn away, to walk back into the darkness that was claiming him, but Nina grabbed his arm. You took this money from Hon, she said. So? Hon called the Vipers, Nina hissed. She pulled the envelope out and held it up, her hand trembling not with fear, but with fury. You think this is freedom? This is a breadcrumb trail. The serial numbers, the bands, they'll track this. And even if they don't, look at the TV. She pointed to a monitor suspended above the ticket counter. It was muted, but the children was bright red, as in suspects thought. Dangerous. A grainy photo of her, taken from her driver's license, was next to a sketch of Jawa. I'm not a witness anymore, she said, her voice cracking. I'm your accomplice. If I get on that bus, I'm just a woman traveling alone with a bag full of stolen mob money and a face on the news. I won't make it to the state line. Jewa stared at the screen, then at her. The logic was cold and undeniable. He had tried to be noble, tried to buy her safety, but he had only succeeded in painting a target on her back. I can't survive out there alone, Nina said, stepping closer, forcing him to look at the monster he had made of her life. And you can't drive and shoot at the same time. She shoved the envelope back into his jacket. We stay together, she said. Or we both die today. Jewa looked at the bus idling at the gate, its engine rumbling like a waiting beast. He looked at Nina, standing tall in her oversized clothes, refusing the escape hatch. You are a fool, he whispered. But he didn't push her away again. The exit was closed. The trap was shut. Jewa stopped mid-breath. He didn't turn his head, but his entire posture locked up, the muscles in his neck cording with tension. Don't look, he whispered, his lips barely moving. By the pretzel stand. Grey coat. Hands in pockets. Nina instinctively started to turn, but he gripped her elbow hard enough to bruise. I said don't look. It's the Vipers. They have the exits. Nina scanned the reflection in the vending machine glass. She saw them. Two men, standing still in the rushing current of travelers, their eyes scanning faces. They weren't looking for a bus, they were hunting. And then she saw a third one coming down the escalator. They know we're here, she whispered. How? The ticket seller, Jewa murmured, his hand sliding inside his jacket to the grip of his gun. He made a call. I've been out of the game too long, I forgot that everyone has a price. He looked at her, his eyes dark and apologetic. I'm going to engage them. I draw their fire toward the loading bay. You run for the subway. You can't win a shootout in a crowd, Nina hissed. You kill innocent people. It's the only way you get out. He began to step away from her, prepared to die loud and violent to buy her 30 seconds of life. Nina looked around frantically. A shootout would end with Jewa dead and her in cuffs. She needed a distraction. She needed a riot. Her eyes landed on the red box mounted on the pillar 5 feet away. Pull in case of emergency. She didn't hesitate. She didn't check for police. She lunged. Nina grabbed the white handle and yanked it down with both hands. The sound was instantaneous and deafening, a piercing, rhythmic shriek that cut through the terminal noise like a physical blow. Strobe lights mounted on the ceiling began to flash blinding white. Fire! Nina screamed, pointing at nothing. Gun! He has a gun. Panic is a contagious disease. In seconds, the bored, tired crowd transformed into a stampede. People screamed, dropping bags and shoving children, surging toward the doors in a terrified wave. The Vipers were swallowed by the human tide. Nina saw the man in the grey coat get knocked off his feet by a terrified businessman. Move! Nina grabbed Jewa's arm, hauling him into the crush. They ran with the mob, invisible in the chaos. They burst through the emergency exit doors, the cold air hitting them like a slap. Just outside, a local news crew was setting up a shot about holiday travel nightmares. The cameraman, startled by the alarm and the screaming crowd bursting forth, swung his heavy camera around, the red recording light blinking. Nina ran straight through the frame. The bright LED light of the camera washed over her face, capturing the shaved head, the terror, and the fierce determination in high definition. She ducked her head too late. She was no longer a shadow. She was the lead story on the 6 o'clock news. The service entrance to the Hotel Monarch was welded shut, but the rusted hinges on the loading dock door gave way with a screech of protesting metal. Jewa shoved Nina through the gap and squeezed in after her, pushing the heavy steel door back into place. Silence fell like a hammer. They were in the kitchen of what used to be the city's crown jewel. Now, it was a tomb of stainless steel and dust sheets, abandoned 3 years ago amidst bankruptcy litigation. The air was frigid and smelled of trap time. Upstairs, Jewa commanded, his voice echoing too loudly in the emptiness. Penthouse. It has only one entrance. They climbed 20 flights of service stairs in the dark, legs burning, lungs heaving. When they finally burst into the penthouse suite, the moonlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating furniture draped in white plastic like ghosts standing vigil over the city. Nina collapsed onto a dust-covered sofa, her chest heaving. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt back, wiping sweat and soot from her forehead. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably, the delayed reaction to the fire alarm, the stampede, the camera. "I'm on the news," she whispered, staring at her trembling fingers. "My face. My name. It's all over." Jewa paced the room, checking the windows. He stopped and looked at her. He looked at the woman he had dragged from a diner into a war. She was stripped of her hair, her uniform, and her life. She was a ruin, and it was entirely his fault. "You are alive," he said roughly. "That is the only metric that matters. Is it?" Nina stood up, anger flaring through the exhaustion. She walked toward him, stepping into his space. "I'm not alive, Jewa. I'm just not dead yet. There's a difference." She shoved his chest. "You made me a target. You made me a criminal. I made you a survivor," he shouted back, grabbing her wrist to stop her from shoving him again. They froze. The anger hung between them, sharp and electric. They were inches apart, breathing the same recycled air, their hearts hammering a frantic rhythm against their ribs. The adrenaline that had kept them running was curdling into something volatile. Jewa looked at her, really looked at her, not as a liability, but as the only other living thing in his universe. The fear in her eyes matched the desperation in his own. He didn't mean to do it. It wasn't a choice, it was a collision. He pulled her in and crashed his mouth against hers. It wasn't gentle. It was a kiss of teeth and bruising force, a desperate attempt to feel something other than terror. Nina didn't pull away. She grabbed the lapels of his jacket and pulled him closer, kissing him back with a fury that matched his own. For 10 seconds, they weren't fugitive and boss, they were two animals verifying their existence in the dark. Then, just as suddenly, they broke apart. Jewa stumbled back, his hand coming up to touch his mouth, looking at her with wide, horrified eyes. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was heavy. They hadn't just crossed a line, they had erased it. And in a world where hesitation meant death, they had just given each other a reason to hesitate. The elevator chime echoed through the empty penthouse like a church bell in a crypt. Jewa froze, his hand hovering over his gun on the coffee table. He watched the digital numbers climb. 18, 19, 20. "It's mean," he whispered, a flicker of relief breaking through his exhaustion. He knows the override code. Only he knows. The door slid open with a smooth hiss. Lieutenant Min stepped out into the moonlit foyer. He was immaculate in a charcoal suit, his hands raised to show he was unarmed. He looked at Jewa, then at Nina, his expression unreadable. "Hyung," Min said, bowing slightly. "I saw the news. I knew you would come to the Monarch. It is the only property the feds haven't frozen yet." Jewa lowered his guard, stepping out from behind the sofa. Do you have the car? I have everything you need, Min said softly. He didn't move forward. He took a step to the side. Behind him, the elevator was not empty. 3 men in tactical gear poured out, rifles raised. They wore the distinct silver snake pins of the vipers on their collars. Jawa's face didn't register fear, it registered a heartbreak so profound it looked like physical pain. Min. The seat was empty, Min said, refusing to meet his eyes. Gravity works one way. Fire, the Viper Point man shouted. Nina, get down. Jawa didn't dive for cover. He dove for her. He tackled Nina just as the air filled with the deafening crack of automatic fire. He threw his body over hers, shielding her from the hail of lead that shredded the plastic-covered furniture and shattered the floor-to-ceiling windows behind them. Glass rained down on them like diamonds. Nina screamed, her face pressed into the dusty carpet, feeling the heavy impacts shudder through Jawa's body. 1. 2. He jerked violently, a wet, guttural sound escaping his throat, then went dead weight on top of her. The firing stopped. The Vipers were reloading, moving to flank. Jawa. Nina scrambled out from under him. He was pale, eyes losing focus. A dark stain was spreading rapidly across his lower back, just above the hip, joining the blood from his previous wound. He tried to push himself up, but his arm collapsed. Run, he wheezed, blood bubbling past his lips. I'll hold them. You can't even stand. Nina grabbed his collar, adrenaline giving her hysterical strength. She saw the service door 10 feet away. The Vipers were vaulting the kitchen island. She dragged him. He left a wide, slick trail on the white marble. She kicked the service door open and hauled him into the darkness of the stairwell just as the bullets began to chew up the doorframe. She slammed the heavy steel door and threw the bolt. Jawa slumped against the concrete wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He wasn't moving. His gun slid from his hand. Nina looked at the door, vibrating with the impacts from the other side, then at the man who had just taken a bullet meant for her. He was out. The architect of the plan was gone. She was alone. They made it 3 floors down before Jawa's legs gave out. Nina dragged him into a housekeeping closet, kicking aside buckets of dried mop water and rusted cleaning carts to clear a space on the cracked linoleum. She slammed the door and wedged the mop handle under the knob. Jawa was grey, his breath coming in shallow, wet rattles. The new bullet was lodged deep in his lower back, just above the hip bone. The exit wound didn't exist. It was still inside. It's hitting the nerve, he gasped, his eyes rolling back. I can't move my leg. You have to take it out. I'm a waitress, Nina cried, her hands hovering over the mangled flesh. I serve coffee. I don't do surgery. If I can't walk, you leave me, he whispered. He grabbed her wrist, his grip weak but desperate. Or you dig it out. Use the knife. Nina pulled the chef's knife from her belt, the one she had carried since the apartment. The blade was dull, the handle slick with sweat. She looked at the lighter in her pocket. She flicked it, running the flame along the steel blade until the soot turned black. It was a pathetic attempt at sterilization in a room filled with mold. Bite down, she ordered, shoving a roll of gauze from a first aid kit she'd swiped from the lobby desk into his mouth. Jawa nodded, his eyes squeezing shut. Nina took a breath. She didn't pray. She didn't hesitate. She shoved the tip of the knife into the wound. Jawa screamed into the gauze, a sound so primal it vibrated through the floorboards. His body arched, muscles spasming violently under her hands. Fresh blood welled up, hot and sticky, coating her fingers, her wrists, her sleeves. Stop moving, she shouted, not with panic, but with anger. She pinned him down with her knee, ignoring his agony, ignoring the sickening squelch of metal scraping against bone. She was digging in meat. She was searching for a piece of lead in a living body. Her fingers slipped inside the incision. She felt the hard, foreign lump. She hooked it. With a grunt of effort, she levered the knife. The bullet popped out, clattering onto the dirty tile like a dropped coin. Jewa went limp, passing out from the shock. Nina sat back, panting. She looked at the bloody bullet. She looked at her hands. They were coated in red up to the elbows. She should have been vomiting. She should have been crying. Instead, she felt precise. Cold. She packed the wound with the rest of the gauze and taped it tight. She wiped the knife on his pant leg and slid it back into her belt. She checked his pulse. Stronger. She stood up and looked in the cracked mirror mounted on the closet door. The terror was gone from her eyes. It had been replaced by a flat, dead calm. The waitress was gone. The operator had arrived. The phone on the housekeeping desk rang. It was a landline, a dusty relic next to the sink. It rang once, loud and jarring in the small room. Nina stared at it. They knew exactly which room she was in. They were watching the internal switchboard. She picked it up. She didn't speak. Nina, a voice said. Smooth. Cultured. It was mean. We don't want you. You are collateral. We only want the king. Nina looked down at Jewa. He was unconscious, his breathing steady but shallow. He was helpless. Here is the offer, Min continued. Open the door. Push him out into the hallway. You walk down the service stairs. We will not follow. You disappear. You leave. Nina looked at the door. The mop handle was a flimsy barrier. They could breach it in 3 seconds if they wanted to. They were stalling because they didn't want to risk Jewa dying in a crossfire before they could interrogate him. You have 30 seconds, Min said. Or we burn the floor. Nina gently placed the receiver on the desk. She didn't hang up. She walked over to Jewa and pulled the heavy automatic pistol from his waistband. It felt massive in her hand, cold and dense. She checked the magazine. 7 rounds. She racked the slide, the mechanical clack-clack echoing clearly through the open phone line. Did you hear that? Nina asked, her voice steady. Silence on the other end. I'm not a waitress anymore, she said into the receiver. And I don't trade lives. Nina, Min's voice lost its polish. You are making a mistake. You are declaring war on the entire syndicate. Come and get him, she said. She smashed the phone against the desk, breaking the connection. She walked to the door and kicked the mop handle tighter. She dragged the heavy cleaning cart over, overturning it to create a barricade. She crouched behind it, leveling the gun at the wood. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't looking for an exit. She was waiting for a target. She had rejected the offer of survival. She had chosen the fight. The wooden door didn't open, it disintegrated. A breaching charge blew the hinges off, filling the small room with choking white dust and the smell of cordite. Nina squeezed the trigger. Bang! The recoil jerked her arm back. A shadow in the doorway flinched and fell. Bang! Another shot into the smoke. Click! The slide locked back. The chamber was empty. Nina stared at the gun, her breath hitching in a sob of pure terror. She pulled the trigger again, uselessly. Click! Click! Ceasefire! Min's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. We have the room. Boots crunched on the debris. Laser sights cut through the smoke, sweeping the floor. They were seconds away from swarming the barricade. A hand clamped over Nina's wrist. Jawa was awake. He was leaning against the overturned cart, his face a mask of sweat and blood, but his eyes were focused. He stripped a heavy gold signet ring from his pinky finger. It was thick, engraved with a tiger, and heavy as lead. He jammed it into Nina's palm and folded her fingers over it. "The ventilation grate," he whispered, nodding to the rusted panel behind her near the floor. "It leads to the laundry chute. Go." "I'm not leaving you," Nina hissed. "You have the ring," he said, his voice hard. "With the ring, you are not a waitress. You are the bank. Now go." He shoved her toward the wall. Nina scrambled back, kicking the grate loose, squeezing her body into the dark, dusty crawl space just as the vipers vaulted the barricade. She froze in the darkness, peering through the slats. Jawa stood up. He didn't raise his hands. He stood with the arrogance of a man who owned the building, even as he bled onto the floor. "I am here," Jawa announced. "The girl is gone. She ran down the fire escape 10 minutes ago." Min stepped through the smoke. He looked at the open window, then at Jawa. He pistol whipped him. Jawa collapsed. Two soldiers grabbed him by the arms, dragging him like a carcass across the broken glass. He didn't fight. He looked straight at the ventilation grate. He didn't blink. "Load him up," Min ordered. "The boss wants him alive for the carving." The room emptied. The footsteps faded. The elevator chimed. Silence returned to the Hotel Monarch, heavier than before. Nina kicked the grate open and crawled back into the room. She was alone. The floor was smeared with his blood. The gun lay uselessly on the tiles. She opened her clenched fist. The gold ring glittered in the gloom. It wasn't just jewelry. It was the keys to the kingdom he had built, and the weapon she would use to burn it all down. Nina slid the ring onto her thumb. It was too big, but she made a fist, and it held. The king is captured. But the war is just beginning. I'll see you in the finale.